Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be giving you a full tank review of the M4A1 FL10. Looks like a tier 8 French wheeled light tank combined with the hull of a tier 5 American medium tank. It has an autoloader, it's fairly nippy, and firstly I'm going to compare it to a bunch of other vehicles at tier 6 and let you know how it stacks up before following it up with some gameplay. And I still can't get over the fact that Chuck Norris is just casually walking past my tank review, probably judging me. Don't judge. Don't look at me, Chuck. That's terrifying. So of course, there's so many different vehicles which you could compare this tank to. I mean, it's the hull of a tier 5 medium tank combined with the turret of a tier 7 plus French light tank. I think the best way to compare this tank is against the tier 6 Swedish autoloading medium tank, the Stridsvagn M4257, the absolute classic at tier 6 medium, the Cromwell Berlin, and also the tier 6 French light tank. So immediately we notice that the M4A1 FL10 has an abysmal damage per minute, below 1,400. Yeah, the Cromwell Berlin literally has 50% more damage per minute than this tank. The Swede is going to be reloading 2 seconds faster, and spoilers has a bigger magazine potential, and this vehicle only really does better than the tier 6 French light tank, the AMX-13. But of course you won't have all of those extra light tank capacity. Well, more on that later on in the mobility. All of these vehicles use 75mm guns, however not all 75mm guns appear to be equal. The M4, Cromwell, and the AMX-13 all have 135 alpha, while the Swede packs a more impressive 150. The M4A1 has an intra-clip reload of 1.75 and a 4-round magazine, a lot like the Swedish tank and also the French light tank. This means that it's kind of able to burst out its damage slightly faster than the other vehicles, but not by much, 0.25 seconds is its advantage compared to the Swede, but it does have a significant advantage compared to the French light tank, which is 2.5 seconds, meaning that this vehicle takes 5.25 seconds to fire its 4 rounds, dealing 540 damage, whereas the light tank will take 7.5 seconds, and the Swedish medium will be able to do 600 damage in 6 seconds, which I feel is pretty much comparable. However, the one thing that always gets me about having these low tier autoloaders with low alpha damage and a fairly long intra-clip reload is that my Cromwell Berlin, while it doesn't have an autoloader, it is actually firing nearly 20 rounds a minute. Now sure, that's when I'm using Brothers in Arms, I'm using Pudding and Tea, and I've got vents on this vehicle. But that means that the intra-clip reload of the Cromwell Berlin for my setup is only 3 seconds, but it never has to have a downtime. And so while it sounds so impressive to have an autoloader on something like the M4 or on the Stridsvagn or even the AMX-13T, the AMX-13T has to reload after it's fired out its 4 rounds for 20 seconds, the Stridsvagn for 16 and the M4 for 18 seconds, whereas the Cromwell doesn't. It doesn't have to have that lengthy reload, it can just keep going. Consequently, if you're a pay-to-win player and you're willing to use a premium consumable, or you just absolutely love the Cromwell Berlin and you're going to put bounty equipment on it, or you're even going to put bond equipment on it, that'll be really filthy, then that vehicle is just going to be infinitely better than the capacity of all of the other tanks, apart from a slight tiny advantage with regards to their burst potential. But remember, you can never reduce the intra-clip as a free-to-play player, which means that the M4A1 will actually be quite good compared to the Cromwell Berlin if you can't have the best crew, if you don't want to use a premium consumable, and you don't want to have the best equipment on the tank, because the intra-clip reload is stable. It's going to be just the same for a pay-to-win player or for a free-to-play player. The penetration on the M4 is identical to the Stridsvagn at 148 for its standard rounds. However, if you load the gold on this tank, you have 186mm of penetration, which is significantly worse than the Cromwell Berlin's 202. So Cromwell Berlin, I think you see what I'm suggesting for all of those pay-to-win players out there. So now onto the gun handling, and this is where it's actually pretty good news for this tank. 2 seconds aim time, 0.38 accuracy. So it's okay. Better dispersion when moving than the 2 medium tanks, but worse than the light tank, but worst in comparison, turret reverse dispersion at 0.18 means that if you're overturning this turret, that's going to be a little brutal. One thing that is nice about this tank, however, is its firing dispersion is 3, which is much better than the AMX-13T's 4 and also the Cromwell Berlin's 4. But remember that those vehicles are going to have a bit longer to be able to aim in, so that's really where it helps this tank to be accurate while it's still unloading at its maximum 1.75 intra-clip reload. One thing I really don't like about any of the autoloaders in this comparison is they're limited to 6 degrees of gun depression and 12 degrees degrees of gun elevation. That makes them feel incredibly awkward on a ridgeline, and you're often going to have to be overexposing your tank, unlike you would have to in some situations with the Cromwell's 8 degrees of depression and 15 degrees of elevation. Alright, so now onto the mobility. The vehicle's power to weight is the second worst here, although significantly better than the Swede, massively worse than the Cromwell Berlins and the AMX-13s. Its top speed limit is 48, a little bit better than the Swede, worse than the other two vehicles, and 20 backwards means that it's on parallel with the other mediums and slightly worse than the 12T. The ground resistances, however, on this tank are really what balances it out. They are literally twice as worse on hard and nearly twice as worse on medium terrain than the Cromwell Berlin, making the Cromwell Berlin zip it around more like a light tank than a medium tank, which the M4A1 certainly feels like. And watch out for the traverse speeds on this vehicle. While they are slightly better than the Stridsvagn 42, they're not going to be nearly as good as the other two vehicles in this comparison. Okay, so now let's move on to the armor. Yeah, I don't think you'd ever expect a French light tank turret to do very well, and 40mm of turret armor on this tank is just not going to be able to ever take a punch frontally, apart from in extraordinary circumstances. Maybe if you're using some of the gun depression that this vehicle has and some ultra low caliber gun is going to hit you, or you can absorb some HE rounds. Yeah, I think it's pushing it. And I can tell you this big box of a tank is probably one of the most juicy things that I've ever seen for a KV2. And so if any of you are feeling really filthy right now, there's a lot of people who have managed to get these from the loot boxes at tier 6 playing them. So maybe you want to take a KV2 out on the battlefield today if you want to go and pick up some very juicy one-shots, because this vehicle has a perfect amount of hit points, 810 for a KV2 one-shot. So now onto the camo rating of this vehicle. It's a very tall tank, as you would expect when you put a fairly large French turret on a big American tier 5 hull, so it has pretty bad camo compared to all of the other vehicles in this comparison, and massively worse camo than the AMX-13T. While that vehicle's moving, it's twice as good. The view range, however, on this tank is a nice surprise. It's 370, which is slightly better than all of the other vehicles, and that will help you to be able to spot at decent distances. So if you are planning on using your Batchat crew in this tank, it's pretty awkward. While you can use the Batchat crew, unfortunately situational awareness will not be on the commander. Your gunner and your driver will work perfectly inside this tank. However, this tank has a rather annoying radio operator, and I can tell you there aren't many French medium tanks that actually have radio operators. Usually they have the commander, the driver, the gunner, and a loader. But this tank doesn't have a loader. It's the radio operator who is on this tank, who also is a loader at the same time. And so you kind of have to try and find a vehicle a bit like the G1R to be able to train the crew on, and then have a really bizarre extra crew member for this tank. It's definitely a little bit annoying. Alright, so how would I like to put equipment on this vehicle? Well, I think you have to use a rotation device. Either use one of the regular ones, make sure you put that in your mobility slot. I think in addition to that, I would thoroughly recommend using vents and coated optics on this tank. It means that I actually get up to 482 meters view range, which is very nice. If you're a complete free-to-play player and you don't have a very good crew, maybe you want to use binoculars at first and then maybe switch it out for coated optics later on when you have a decent crew on the tank. But if you absolutely don't care about spotting your opponents at decent distances, and if that's the case, I would question why you were playing a medium tank in the first place, then possibly you could get a turbocharger in this tank and put it in the mobility slot. But honestly, I think if you decide to drop the coated optics on this tank and want to really boost the speed up that much, you'd probably be best playing the light tank. Alright, so let's roll out in a nice matchup in this tank. I'm not going to be featuring a gameplay against tier 8s today, but really, how is this tank going to perform against tier 8s? I can tell you it's not going to be very good. Your penetration at 148 is going to be severely lacking. If you load the gold even at 186, that's not really enough to go through the front of something like an IS-3 reliably, and you're still going to have to flank. You might be able to go through with the gold rounds on this tank against something like a T-29. Yeah, well, I'm trying to be transparent that this is not going to be the kind of vehicle that is going to do incredibly well inside your tier 8 matchups if you want to play solo, and you're best to play as a support tank. Now, I want to get forwards in this tank. I want to be aggressive. I want to try and get into pole position, which is up here in front of the Type 64. And I was thinking maybe I can shoot this Leopard on the way. Yeah, no, well, probably not. Don't want to reload. And unfortunately for me, I got spotted right now. And when you're in a big boxy tank with no armor like this, the last thing that you want is to be hit by artillery. We've got 3 of those on the enemy team that we've got to consider as well. This vehicle, it's all about playing that support role. It's kind of a weird one, because if I was playing in an AMX-12T, I would try and get forward, I would try and use my camo, I would try and get into a bush, and I would try to spot for my team. But I'm not. I'm playing in a damage dealer, and this is, I guess, a bursty tank. So this is what the vehicle is all about. Good aim time, good handling. 1-2, goodbye Leopard. Hopefully we can hit this guy. Oh, just miss him there, but hopefully we can put the extra shot in, and that should help my ELC to be able to finish him off. Good stuff. And that's what this tank does. That is this tank in a nutshell. Get on a ridgeline, bangity bangity bong. That is what this vehicle is all about. 1.75 seconds intra-clip reload. Just doesn't really feel that the alpha damage is super special, but I feel like it's necessary because the last thing you want is to have a tier 6 tank that's just absolutely outrageous. So I'd like to fit in here, but unfortunately for me, this T1 Heavy, while he's not doing anything wrong, I'm hoping that he's just going to let me go forwards and then maybe I can shoot the opposite tank. There you go, 1, we get 2 into him. T1 gave me a little bit of a bump forwards there. Maybe he thought I was going forwards. So I have a look at him and I'm worried. I just don't want to get pushed out in the open right now. It looks like the T1 Heavy has kind of had enough as he's just going to drive forwards. And I can't imagine he's going to last too long there with all of the tank destroyers that are going to be sitting up in the ridgeline like that. This flank is really challenging to be able to attack. I've been hating it so much recently when I try to attack it from the south, because if you end up here, then all the TDs are going to gun you there. Alternatively, if you make your way... Oh, wait a minute, can't miss this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that is what this vehicle is all about. Look at that. We were able to do pretty much 600 damage there, just under, about 550 damage with the high rolls that we had to the P43 BIS. In fact, we high rolled every shot there. Could you believe it? That's pretty unlucky when you high roll 4 in a row for the enemy tank, and very lucky for me. Back to what I was saying about this flank, I'm finding it quite tricky because you have to hang in here. But again, if... Oh, goodbye. Well, every time I go into third-person mode, I kill something. I should do that more often. But if you hang around here, you've also got the awkward situation of getting sniped from that kind of a position. I see loads of very sneaky players loving to use that bush to try and chase you. And also, if you decide to push down around here, it gets incredibly awkward because you won't be able to get around the back without getting absolutely annihilated. So what I decided to do is to make my way around the corner to get into position. I'm loading some gold here, so I've got an advantage against these tier 5 heavy tanks. Can't really afford to bounce any shells in a close game like this when we are down by 2 vehicles. But remember, as a premium tank, which will make premium credits, as long as you're penetrating, you're still going to be making decent credits. So the Type 64 rushes in there with reckless abandon and manages to distract the KV-1 for long enough for us to be able to flank it. GG Type 64. That's really nice to see light tanks playing actively in that scenario. Okay, so in this situation, I see a T-52 fighting a Dickamex. I don't think that Dickamex is going to last very long, so immediately I am on my way back. I know that my cap circle is in jeopardy. I need to get back there to be able to protect it against the T-52, against the Stuck that's on the high ground, the 3 self-propelled guns who are going to be supporting, and looks like my Gorilla's had enough of life because he's going to be just driving down there. Would have been a little bit more sensible, I guess, if the Gorilla had come up, but I can understand he's probably just trying to drive quickly to get into the middle of as many allies as he can, but not very efficient for him to be able to escape, and hopefully he's going to stay in it. Maybe he's going to help me later on. We'll have to find out. Maybe he's going to spot people from the middle of the map, possibly. So in this situation, I always get nervous about playing a big boxy tank like this. Something like the T-52 will still be able to smash us. Even the Stuck, if it's firing AP, could possibly go through us. If they're firing HE and he gets a really good roll, then he's still going to be able to go through us. But oh, this is where you want to have the Stuck. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And unfortunately for me, I didn't realize the ridgeline was behind the bush there. But this T-52 just comes forward and puts a couple of shots into us. It's hard to miss this tank. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Type 64. I have to get forwards, my friend. Apologies, didn't mean to block you there, sir. Okay. So we're seeing so much of the good and the bad about this tank. It's good when you are unloading on things. It's bad when you're a big boxy vehicle that isn't very fast, that doesn't have very good camo rating. And the vehicle, while I have made it work on ridge lines that we saw in the B3 area where we were engaging the P43 BIS on the enemy team, I'd also like to stress, as I said in the statistical review of this vehicle, that the gun depression just feels incredibly awkward. The 6 degrees of gun depression this tank has makes it feel just abysmal. But then again, I was playing the GSAW 1008 with its 11 degrees of gun depression, so maybe that's going to make everything feel abysmal. So I'm not sure what that T-52 was planning there. Do you think he was planning something extraordinary sneaky? Maybe he was sitting up in this location expecting me to be able to come through here, and he was aiming, prepared to get me. Luckily for me, we managed to catch him out in the open, but unluckily for me, we get hit by the SU-100, and I ping the map as to the location that they are. And having taken that SU-100 hit, I'm glad that wasn't the 122mm. And I'm either incredibly glad that he low-rolled the 100. Actually, no, you can't low-roll the 100 that badly, can you? Ooh, 250. Oh god, quick maths. Don't put me on the spot. Obviously 250, quarter of that is going to be what? 100. What? No. Oh my god, quick maths. This is terrible. It's not 75, it's like 62 and a half, right? So I believe it's 62 and a half. Oh god. For goodness sake. Hold on, let's just do what I'm actually good at, and that is just smashing out vehicles that are in the open. Yeah, it's going to be 62 at... What? Oh god, I'm going to have to pause it. I think it's 62 and a half. Yes, it is. Brain meltdown for me. I've obviously been streaming and making YouTube videos every single day for a little bit too long. And so in theory, if he had the 250 alpha damage gun and he rolls... No, it was impossible. So that means that I know that the SU-100, although I didn't at the time, because obviously if I've shown how bad I am at doing quick maths like that, I didn't know that the SU-100 was using, I guess, the 85mm on that tank, which is a rather unusual gun to be using on the SU-100. Really, what makes that vehicle special is the 100 or the 122mm. So in this scenario, it's really awkward. I just don't know how aggressive to be. Should I make my way down the slope and possibly get caught out? Where is this Stug? That was the one that was really getting me. Where do you think the Stug would be? When the SU-100 hit me, it could have been the T-52 still spotting me, or it could have been maybe the Stug down in a location below. So I just want to dip my toes into the bath here rather than just jumping straight in. And this is where this vehicle is just so much worse than a Cromwell Berlin, so much worse than an AMX-13. If I was in those vehicles with good camo rating, I would feel so much more confident in being aggressive. In a vehicle like this, where I don't, and I've got a really big silhouette, I'm the easiest thing to be able to hit, and as you can see through this game, we haven't bounced anything at all. So I ask for help, engaging the Stug. I'm actually amazed because the gorilla on my team is still alive. So I didn't get spotted by the Stug the first time, but then when he turned around, he was actually able to spot me there. Unfortunately for me, my gorilla doesn't be able to get a shot in from his advice. I must go and take a look to see where that gorilla is. I think he's actually sitting up on the mound, getting the high ground right in the middle of the map. I don't know. Some people are just lucky inside World of Tanks. I should know. I'm one of them quite often, as you will have probably seen with the Best Moments videos, of which there will be a Best Moments video coming very soon to the channel as well, so stay tuned for that one. Alright, so I think the Stug is in those bushes, but I don't really have the confidence to know exactly which one, and if I fire he might spot me and be able to hit me, and I'm not taking that risk right now. I'm just going to chill here for a second. I've got the Stug locked down. What can the Stug do? If the Stug goes there, I spot him. If the Stug goes there, I spot him. And just while I'm waiting to see if the Stug actually does anything, let's actually have a quick look to see where the gorilla is. Oh, yes, he is actually. Look at him. He's sitting right there in the mound. There's the Stug. There he is. Okay, I clicked back quick enough. Boom. Good stuff. Shutting down the Stug, reducing another one of the enemy team to now put it so it's a 5 versus 5 situation. Nice. You see that in this vehicle, it definitely will require a more calm and controlled approach rather than a Cromwell Berlin or the AMX-13, which you can be far more aggressive in and get away with murder. The Stritzwang, on the other hand, is, I think, just statistically worse than this vehicle. I would not rather play the Stritzwang. The only thing that's better about the Stritzwang will be that alpha damage, but you do sacrifice the clip reload, but it is better to have the DPM. I think the Stritzwang will be better in pure DPM scenarios where you absolutely, utterly just have to shoot the enemy tank and then be able to reload, but I would never recommend that as a very good premium tank either. So that is really the kind of vibe that I'm getting from the M4A1 FL10. So we're aiming up at this bush here. I'm expecting the SU-100 to be in there, but my sixth sense doesn't go off, which means, well, he's probably not actually sitting in that bush, otherwise he clearly would have spotted me. I have bad camera rating on this vehicle. So where would the SU-100 be? And oh my lord, he's right behind me. Why was he there? I don't even know. I really don't even know why he was there. So I was thinking about actually reloading high explosive rounds there for a second, and then I thought to myself, wow, the HE rounds with only 38mm of pen on this tank, it's going to be very challenging to be able to pen the M44 or the M41 HMC. So I'm actually going to load standard rounds, and I ask the Type 64 to wait for me, because I tell you what, even though this situation looks like our team should be able to win it, trust me, I have seen more stupid fails at the end of World of Tanks. If the Type 64 rushes in and gets one shot, then I have an incredibly tricky situation where I have to go and try and fight two artilleries at the same time. And with 237 hit points and a very lightly armored French medium/light tank, then I might not be taking those hits. Luckily for me, the Type 64 actually managed to spot him, and I got a funny feeling that maybe the Type 64 even held the shots. If the Type 64 was holding the shots there to try and get me 7 kills, a massive thank you to you, buddy. I really didn't deserve it, but I very much appreciate it. Okay, spoilers. I'm going to speed this game up here because there is no artillery in this bush location. So instead we go on a magical, mystical tour. And I'd like to give a massive thank you actually to this griller. I'm very happy. Even though you went and sat in probably one of the most ridiculous locations, he goes and does the right thing, which is capping. I go and expect the artillery would be maybe sitting over in this location, but unfortunately for me and my opportunity to get a Radley Walters medal, the artillery was actually located in the corner. And while the Type 64, look at him, he's saying go in the chat. He thinks that I'm going to be able to make it. I try my hardest, but I'm in a slow medium tank still making my way up the slope. So the Type 64, bless him, decides to go in to try and pick up the kill after trying to give me the Radley Walters medal. And boom, the sneaky M44 manages to finish him off. I said a massive thank you to the Type 64 after this game. Big thank you to you, oh my lord, Babik Karuzenka 210 of the European server for doing an unnecessary but very lovely thing to try and give me a Radley Walters medal here for 8 kills. I didn't ask for the kill. I asked for you to wait because I was worried that this was going to happen to both of us inside their base. And also, I contacted Sergeant Pippa on my team in the Griller and let them know how considerate it was of them that they actually decided to leave the spawn, although they did have a bit of a rendezvous in the middle of the map, and go towards the enemy cap circle and to cap there to give me and Babek Karozenka time to go and try and find the artillery. It's just a shame that my poor friend managed to get shut down. So this was an ace tanker for the M4A1 FL10 and 1,405. That'll probably stay an ace tanker for a while. 7 kills, 2,591 damage, and we make a very decent profit with or without a premium count as we didn't fire many premium rounds in this game, although it was a very nice matchup, and I can expect that this tank will be very frustrating against tier 7 and tier 8 tanks. We are most likely going to have to fire a substantial amount of gold to remain competitive, and you're probably going to bounce quite a few of them. So all in all, what do I think about this vehicle? Well, it's a nice little surprise inside the loot boxes. Would I gamble inside the loot boxes to be able to gain this exclusive? Oh no, I really wouldn't. I'd say the vehicle all in all is worse than a Cromwell Berlin for the vast majority of players. The fact that you don't have to reload in the Cromwell Berlin allows you to be so much more dynamic. The fact that your camera rating is better allows you to be more dynamic. The fact that your mobility is better allows you to be more dynamic. I think you're kind of seeing what I'm getting at here. You can go everywhere you want in that vehicle. It's just so much more flexible. You don't get stuck having to reload. Sure, this thing has bursty damage, and I'm not going to really enjoy getting shot by these things in something like a Comet over the next few days. There's probably going to be a lot of them in the matchmaker. Is it a god-awful tank? No. Is it better than the Stridsvagn M4257? Kind of is better when it comes down to the view range, the mobility, and also, I guess, a tiny little bit of intra-clip reload advantage, but of course you're losing the alpha damage advantage that you have on that tank, so I would put this thing on par with that vehicle. But spoilers, I've never really said that the Stridsvagn M4257 is the most enjoyable tank to play at tier 6. And do you know what? I would probably rather play the AMX-13 than this tank. At least then I am playing a pure light vehicle rather than some pseudo medium tank, light tank hybrid that doesn't ever really truly get to excel at one of its individual roles. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for me today. Really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did and you liked that tank review, then make sure you give the video a thumbs up. But if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about the M4A1 with the FL10. Do you think it's just whatever kind of wargaming kind of tank, or do you think it actually has a specific purpose in the game and you're kind of looking forward to playing one of these little freaks on the battlefield if you get lucky enough to be able to get one when you gamble inside the loot boxes? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.